Good Monday. This is Jay Brew, co-chairman of Seafried and Brew. Well, if you'll remember, earlier this year we did webcasts in terms of how you can transform yourself into one of the top 15th percentile banks that we rank every year. Well, we just came out with our just released 2013 top 15th percentile banks, divided into sub-S banks and non-sub-S banks across the nation. So you can access all the names of these banks, and if you are a top 15th percentile bank, is that you can go into sb15th.com and put your bank number into the program. It'll give you all sorts of information, including press releases, all around your status as being in that top 15th percentile. So you can use it. We have some banks that actually put it on their emails that they've been put into the S&B top 15th percentile. You can go to your local newspapers, local news agencies, place that there, place it on your website. But let's look at some of the key indicators this past year in terms of the top 15th percentile group, along with our national benchmark group of community banks. When we look at the composite score, this is based on risk and reward. What we saw is that in 2013, a slight downward trend from a 65.7 to a 65.23. That compares to composite scores for those average banks across the country, actually moving up a little bit from 43.87 to 44.91, which is once again community banks still seeing their non-current loans declining in here, their earnings heading up somewhat. And when we look at risk, is that it wasn't in risk where the composite had the decline in score. Actually, risk moved down somewhat, as well as it did with the national average. But it was in the reward piece that we saw the reward move down from 69.21 to 68.15, whereas, as I said before, we had the opposite effect with the national group moving up somewhat from 2012 to 2013. So we want to look at that earnings component. They're still in the top 15th percentile, but definitely there's some pressure. And we know where that pressure is in terms of net interest margin. Net interest margin moving down from 3.94 to 3.87, but once again, these are the top performing banks. So when we compare that to the national benchmark, also seeing a slight decline, just about the same amount of basis points, moving from a 365 to a 354. Of course, where we're seeing it is on both sides, both yield on earning assets for the top 15th percentile moving down about 24 basis points, and at the same time cost of funds moving from 0.76 to 0.58, but not enough to stem that decline in the net interest margin. We then go to net overhead and look at net overhead. The top 15th percentile doing it again in terms of a decrease from 1.68 to 1.63. This compares unfavorably with what we're seeing in the national group, moving just 2 basis points from a 2.49 to a 2.47. Net overhead being the difference between that non-interest income and non-interest expense, is that non-interest income actually headed up somewhat 4 basis points for the national group, or rather for the top 15th percentile, but the national group moving up 2 basis points in here from a 0.75 to a 0.77. Once again, with expense control being a big part of it. Compare the 2.94 to the 3.25 for the national benchmark group. This is something we've talked over and over again about. If the top 15th percentile can do it, why can't the average bank in the country have the same level of non-interest expense? So as we look at the top 15th percentile for 2013, the key here is with the highest performing banks, they have to keep working to stay up there at the levels that basically define a top 15th percentile community bank. And based with strategic planning that we do here at Seafried and Brew, is that we can show your bank how it can move up into the top 15th percentile over time, taking less risk and getting a higher level of reward. Have a great week. This is Jay Brew, co-chairman of Seafried and Brew.